You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, women's hockey fans, Erica Ayala here. I am your host of Locked On Kraken as part of the Locked On NHL Network, but also your special contributor on our women's hockey, or as I like to say, WOHO Spotlight every other Friday on the Locked On NHL channel and show. For those who I'm meeting for the first time, first of all, thank you for listening and thank you for watching Locked On NHL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and making us your choice every single day. And I have been calling women's hockey games for the last 7 hockey seasons, almost since the beginning of the league, now known as the Premier Hockey Federation, formerly known as the National Women's Hockey League. I am the first Black or Latina to call games in that league, and at 96 games and broadcasts in hand, not counting some special events, I am the longest tenured broadcaster. Almost at the century mark, folks. But anyway, enough about me. Let's get into the women's hockey spotlight. Now, last time I was on Locked On NHL, we had Commissioner Reagan Carey from the Premier Hockey Federation joining us because the league was about to embark on its first ever All-Star Showcase in Canada. Now, Buffalo hosted twice, the Nashville Predators hosted, the Penguins, Pittsburgh Penguins hosted, and on, the Minnesota Wild. So this was the first time north of the U.S. border, and it was a time. My company, Black Rosie Media, was on hand, and this is the amazing Angelica Rodriguez with a quick recap. Team Canada takes All-Star Showcase, but Team World steals the show in Toronto. Let's get into that a little bit more. Now, Team World was essentially rest of the world. The players were divided by their nationalities, and so Canadians represented Team Canada. Those from the U.S. represented the United States, and anyone from outside of those two countries represented Team World. And it was Riveters forward Fanny Gasparix who had 4 goals for Team World in that All-Star Showcase, and she has been fantastic. She was fantastic, I should say, for Team World. The Riveters are struggling a little bit. We'll get into standings in a minute, but she has been one of the producers for the Riveters. And the reason that they stole the show, this Team World group, is because of their now infamous Selly, the unicorn horn Selly. That's Fanny Gasparix. Once again, shout out to Tiffany Thompson, who took these photos in Toronto for Black Rosie Media. This apparently is something that comes from the Czech players, from those representing Czechia, including, of course, Team World captain Mrazova, who plays for the Connecticut Will. And so Katarina Mrazova brought this over along with the other Czech players, and it was Fanny Gasparix that had a lot of celebrating to do for Team World, getting them into the championship game against who else but Team Canada. And speaking of Team Canada, a little bit of gamesmanship here. Team Canada, you can see Lauren Gable, who also represents the Boston Pride. They co-opted and stole the unicorn horn celebration. They ultimately win 3-2. Lauren Gable, for her part, 3 goals and 1 assist, is there with Reagan Carey. She's on the right-hand side there in this photo. Lauren Gable in the middle. Lauren Gable, 3 goals, 1 assist, wins MVP for skaters for the All-Star Showcase. And her teammate, Corrine Schroeder, wins best overall goaltender. She was able to make 25 saves to ice it for Team Canada. Congratulations And not only do Lauren Gable and and Corrine Schroeder take home some prize money and, of course, bragging rights for their other Boston Pride teammates, but they also help the Boston Pride sit at the top of the table currently in the Premier Hockey Federation. The Boston Pride have absolutely dominated this season. Corrine Schroeder talked over All Star Weekend that she had a goal of having 5 shutouts on her career as a newcomer to the PHF. Well, she has 7. And let's take a look at these standings here right now. The Boston Pride sit at the top of the table with 40 points, 14 wins, 2 losses. The Toronto 6, 12 2-2 with 36 points. The Minnesota Whitecaps in the mix, 10 wins, 4 losses, and have gone to overtime twice. And the Connecticut Whales sit in 4th place, 8 wins, 7 losses, 26 points overall. The Riveters and Gasparics sit in 5th. Right now, we believe that's on the outside looking in. The PHF has not officially released their playoff format, but maybe stick with me and the women's hockey spotlight so we can have some more insight on that. Followed by the expansion team, the Montreal Force. The amazing Sophie Betty went down with an injury, so the Montreal Force are set to take on their other Canadian rival, the Toronto 6, this weekend in the only series of action for the PHF. So we'll see if she can return. And the Buffalo Beauts really having difficulty getting wins, only 2 on the season. I mentioned Gasparics, Fanny Gasparics, who was amazing in the PHF All Star Showcase and has been great for the Riveters. Well, I also want you to know that she represents Team Hungary. And if you're not already, you should definitely follow Erin Brown on social media at Rinkside, because right now Hungary, as well as Slovakia and 3 other teams, are competing in what is known as the 5 Nations. Now, this is an opportunity for these teams to have international competition, not technically a sanctioned tournament, but definitely important. In North America, we know it as 4 Nations, and haven't really seen that tournament in a while, but we'll probably get to that on another women's hockey spotlight. But want to shout out Erin Brown. She was in Sweden. I know we talked about a few weeks ago the U18 tournament for the women in the IIHF. Erin Brown was there. And of course, you likely remember that we talked about the 14-year-old phenom. She'll be 15 soon. Nela Lopusanova for Slovakia. She has been on a tear once again, but also Gasparics for Team Hungary. And so again, you can see Erin Brown is following all the action of the 5 Nations tournament being held in Budapest, Hungary. So definitely take a look at that. Gasparics and her Riveters teammate, as well as her countrywoman, Reka Debasi, are not with the Riveters, but the Riveters have a bye weekend, so not the end of the world there. France, Norway, also in that tournament. So again, follow Erin Brown. You can also follow her very own newsletter, Rinkside, where she covers women's hockey as well as covering women's hockey for places like The Hockey News. Speaking of women's hockey news, let's get you over to the PWHPA. That is the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. They have a barnstorming model. They are all about for the players, by the players. They have 4 teams that are sponsored or are named after sponsors. So you have Team Harvey, Team Adidas, Team Scotiabank, and Team Sonnet. And the PWHPA just announced that they are going to have their championship series is coming to California, specifically to Southern California. And again, as the Locked On Kraken host, I am really excited to tell you about this one because the Seattle Kraken and their ownership group, Oakview Group, and their AHL affiliate are going to be involved. So here's how it's going to go. You're going to have the 4 teams play in 3 different locations in Southern California. They're going to start on March 10th at the practice facility of the Anaheim Ducks, which is Great Park Ice. And then they will play March 11th at Toyota Sports Center, which is the practice facility of the LA Kings. And the championship between the top 2 teams will be held at Acrisure Arena, the home of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, which of course is the AHL affiliate of the Seattle Kraken. And on March 12th, a champion for the PWHPA and their secret Dream Gap Tour will be crowned. That being said, the PWHPA, they still have plenty of showcases. And so again, their model is more of a barn swing model, and they've been able to partner with a lot of men's hockey leagues and teams throughout their tour. And so you can see here at the top that they have coming up starting today, they have their OHL showcase. And so all 4 teams will take part in that. Then they have a Tampa showcase later this month. And then the Washington Capitals will host them in Washington, D.C., March 4th through 5th. So it's all 4 teams, and the sponsored titled teams are going to make the final championship run. But let's talk about who is at the top of the table. And it's Team Harvey's. They have 27 points overall, followed by Team Adidas. Then you have Team Scotiabank and Team Sonnet. Now you can see here that the top 5 scorers, you have Marie-Philippe Poulin actually being outscored from an assist perspective by Rebecca Johnston, 2 players that, of course, have played for Hockey Canada on the women's senior national team. Johnston for Team Scotiabank has 9 goals and 8 assists, while MPP Captain Canada Captain Clutch for Team Harvey's has 9 goals and 6 assist. The leading scorer for the United States, Abby Rock for Team Sonnet, who's kind of bottom of the basement in the PWHPA, but Abby Rock has 7 goals, 6 assists. I've probably talked about Abby Rock a time or 2 in my tweets on this spotlight, and certainly on Locked on Kraken. Big fan of her work. Well, that'll do it for the Women's Hockey Spotlight. Thank you so much, as always, for making Locked on NHL a part of your daily routine. And you can find me, Erica Ayala, over at Locked on Kraken and on social media at elindsay08. I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel and Gil so you can have the rest of your hockey news this Friday.